Welcome back to Canadian Justice, where we're discussing how the Canadian Revenue Agency has suddenly revoked the charitable status of one of the country's oldest Jewish charities. Now, in the last segment, Lance, you were talking about how this fight, the core of it relates to the charitable purpose of the JNF. And the CRA said that the original charitable purpose for JNF was no longer acceptable. Can you explain the background there?
Sure. So when we were founded in 1967, the agreed upon charitable object was that we would provide indigent laborers, indigent meaning poor people, with simple employment like digging reservoirs, planting trees, thereby keeping them off of the welfare rolls, thereby keeping them out of poverty. So these indigent laborers who were mainly new immigrants or Palestinians, local Israelis, just people who otherwise were didn't have employment, uh, received a small salary for manual labor that they did to advance charitable projects. So CRA's point of view was that uh, helping combat poverty is not giving people an asset or employment before they're poor, but rather once they're poor and they have nothing. At that point, you can provide soup or clothes or whatever they need. And our comment was, A, we agreed to this, and B, helping people before they're on the welfare rolls is indeed charitable, and we have Canadian examples in previous court cases that demonstrate that that is a not just appropriate, but it's a legal form of charity. So we're really flabbergasted. But regardless, we've really tried to be cooperative and collaborate with the CRA and said, if this is not working, we'll come up with something else. So one of the objects we proposed to them is that we would build charitable social service infrastructure. And so that means building those assets like a mental health center, a women's shelter, things of that sort that benefit all types of Israeli residents. And so it's a very common practice. Canadians support these types of facilities all over the world. So why not in Israel too?
So you proposed these alternative charitable purposes. I think you said
Yeah.
10 different proposals to the CRA of negotiating to get to an agreement to help preserve the charitable status that the JNF has had since I think you said 1960s. But the CRA seemed completely unwilling to negotiate with you. Why?
You're correct that they did not negotiate any of the potential objects with us or any of the other matters that were raised during our 10 years of back and forth. And with respect to why, I think you should call the CRA to your program and ask them directly because it does not make sense to us. Our counsel, who's been in the field for decades, shared with us this is the first case, this is the first file where his client did not get an appointment to meet with the CRA for a substantive conversation. And he was shocked because this wasn't over a year or 2 years, it's many, many years. I will acknowledge that at the 11th hour in March of this year, the CRA finally, months before we were about to be revoked, agreed to have a meeting with us. They showed up without an agenda, without one question for us. And in our minds, it was this is a point, a checkbox, and to say, okay, we met with these people, but they asked for a meeting, we met with them, thank you very much. But there was nothing substantive about it all. And we're incredibly disappointed because revocation is the worst possible sanction that the CRA can choose. And they had multiple other options, multiple other off ramps to solve this problem. And the fact that there wasn't any negotiation with a decades old charity with hundreds of thousands of supporters, it doesn't make sense. So please ask the CRA that question directly.
I mean, you sort of alluded to this that the lawyer who's been representing you said that he hasn't seen anything like this happen. Uh, Can you expand on that? Is this something that is really a unique and strange outcome in about 30 seconds?
Yes, we believe the manner in which JNF has been treated by the CRA is indeed incredibly unusual. The fact that we were revoked without any kind of substantive conversation, the fact that the revocation letter was printed before we had our day in court at the Federal Court of Appeal, which will take place hopefully in the spring of 2025, incredibly unusual. It's only charities are only revoked in writing in cases where there's an aggravated situation,
Right.
which is generally means fraud, which is not our case.
Right.
So something indeed is very unusual.
We've got to go to break, but we'll be right back.